When the clock strikes midnight, the promise of a dream will come to its end, but so too could it signal the beginnings of a nightmare, only to wait for things to come full circle, arriving at the midnight hour once again. With that being said, I will say spoiler warnings for those who haven't seen episode 6 of RWBY Volume 8 just yet. I will not be showing the episode or any clips from it in this video, simply images of the episode and analyzing the events that take place. I will leave a link in the description below so you guys can go to Rooster Teeth first, watch the episode there, and support the series that we all love. Now, if the title of this episode was any indication, that being Midnight, this is a Cinder-focused episode, and we start off with Cinder's long-awaited backstory, where we see that Cinder was seemingly born and raised for the first 10 years or so of her life on a farm, where she was fairly mistreated. She was responsible for cleaning the place, but ignored by everyone around her, and picked on by the other children. If she decided to fight back, well, things would only get worse for her. And it seemed, in general, she was not being fed enough, given enough nutrients, etc., because she seemed very malnourished when we see her there. But we don't see her there for long, as she is promptly sold off to some high and mighty person, owner of a hotel, I'm guessing in Mistral. Judging by the outfits that Cinder was wearing and the rest of the people at her farm, as well as the general look of the hotel itself, I'm gonna guess that this was in Mistral, and so Cinder was not lying back in Volume 3 when she was addressing the entire world at the fall of Beacon Academy, when she said she was born and raised in Mistral. But things seemingly got a bit worse for Cinder after being sold. As young Cinder enters the hotel for the first time, the place that will be her new home, she sees how grand it really is. 4 or 5 stories tall, with people all over the place seeming to just enjoy their carefree lives. But the wonder of this new world that Cinder has just entered doesn't really last for long, as she's promptly introduced to the 2 girls who will be her new stepsisters, and they seem to look down on Cinder immediately upon meeting her, as well as the woman who will be Cinder's new stepmother, the Madame of the hotel. And she promptly tells Cinder what her duties are going to be: to make sure the laundry is clean, the dishes are spotless, and the floor is clean enough to eat off of. But as the Madame is about to leave, Cinder spots some food that is in the kitchen and asks about it, because obviously she hasn't been fed in quite a while, or at least fed well. And so the Madame picks up a single bun and throws it on the floor in front of Cinder, saying, "You better get to work. The floors are absolutely filthy." And as she leaves, she smirks, as well as the 2 girls, who seem to snicker at Cinder as well, making Cinder likely feel more alone than she ever has in her entire life. And so Cinder began her new life in service of this hotel, bringing food to customers that she would never be able to have herself, only to have the doors slammed in her face after doing so. Preparing sweets that she's likely never tasted before, only to have these sisters take it from her and mock her by tasting it in front of her. The only food Cinder is allowed is the scraps that the other customers won't eat, bread crusts, etc. Cinder is responsible for cleaning this entire place, dusting everything, cleaning the toilets, doing the laundry, everything, and is shown no appreciation. And gods forbid she drops a tray or makes a mistake, her life will only be made that much worse. But her hardships don't go completely unnoticed, as one person, one patron of the hotel, a huntsman named Rhodes, does notice what Cinder is going through. And one day, as Cinder is scrubbing one of the upper floors, she takes notice of him as well, as he's recently acquired a pair of new blades. But that intrigue is short-lived, as the evil stepsisters decide to make Cinder's life a little bit worse. They walk over the floor that Cinder has just cleaned with their cloven hooves, leaving muddy footprints everywhere. And of course, that upsets Cinder, and we see that Cinder, by this point, has already awakened her semblance, which is honestly no surprise given all of the crap that she would have gone through early in life. Her anger likely would have easily awakened her semblance, and it activates in anger now. As she's holding a wet brush, of course, with the scorching caress, it superheats it and causes a steam explosion, which, acting out like this, of course, the Madame doesn't really take very kindly. And we do see the one trinket that the Madame did gift Cinder, a nice yellow necklace that has lightning dust built into it, so the Madame can just hit a single button and electrocute Cinder whenever she wants. So, yeah, real nice woman there. And we see that this is where Cinder learned the line, Without you, I am nothing. The Madame burned that into Cinder's mind through the torture that she put her through. But with torture like this, people are driven into a corner and will often turn to drastic measures if the opportunity arises. We see Cinder enter her room, which she has to crawl through a grate to get to. It seems to be just the furnace room. There's a blanket and a couple pillows on the floor, other things stored around the place, not really ideal living conditions. But we see that Cinder has stolen the huntsman's blade that she saw earlier, with obvious intentions to use it to try to better her situation. But she doesn't really get the chance to, as the huntsman himself, Rhodes, had followed her there. Cinder tries to attack him out of fear, but that obviously doesn't work, as he's trained, she's not, and she's quickly disarmed. Rhodes then puts down his own weapons and says he's not there to hurt Cinder. But Cinder picks up one of those weapons and tries attacking him again. This time, though, Rhodes defends himself with his semblance. It seems he can turn his skin to a metal of sorts, able to block a blow from a mace with his bare hands. Very useful semblance to have for a huntsman, especially when fighting Grimm, attacking with teeth and claws normally. So yeah, very useful semblance. And he tells Cinder that, I've seen everything that you go through around here. Not really a great life that you have, but hurting them is not going to make your life any better. You could run after doing so, but then you'd be running the rest of your life. Cinder realizes this, and her eyes downcast, says it's easy for him to say. He's got all the freedom in the world. He can go wherever the heck he wants. And Rhodes realizes that Cinder wants to become a huntress. And so Rhodes asks her how old she is, and she responds that she's 10 years old. And after learning Cinder's age, Rhodes simply responds, looks like we have 7 years to train you for the Huntress exam then. He has already resolved himself to spend the next 7 years of his life training Cinder, as well as doing the rest of his huntsman duties, but I'm guessing Rhodes has something in his past, or sees something in Cinder where he sees hope to change this girl's life and make things better. That once she is 17 years of age, an adult, she doesn't need her parents' permission and can do what she wants and earn her own freedom. And so, over the next few years, that's exactly what they do. Whenever Rhodes is at the hotel between missions he's going on as a huntsman, he is spending some time training Cinder. Of course, whenever she has free time, because she's still very much a slave of this hotel and the madam, forced to watch Rhodes be freely coming and going from the hotel, all the while still getting tortured by this electricity, by the madam, and tormented by her stepsisters, etc. Eventually, though, after some time has passed, Rhodes sees that Cinder has grown a great deal, in both combat and supposedly maturity as well, as he gifts her one of his blades. He wields 2 maces normally and has those 2 blades and gives one to Cinder, which turns out to be a mistake, as after another short period of time, we see that the sisters go to their mother quite alarmed, saying, Cinder has a weapon. Come quick, mother. We need to stop this. Or you need to stop her because you have the little button that will shock her and, hopefully make her drop that. Well, we'll see how well that goes. This is happening at about 20 minutes to midnight on that day. And at about 5 minutes to midnight, Rhodes walks into the hotel. We know that some time has passed between the time he gave her the sword and when he arrives here, because he's got a new scar on his face. He seems to be a bit older, etc. So I'm guessing Cinder might be 15 or 16 at this time. But still, as he arrives at the hotel, no one is in sight. He hears a crash come from one of the back rooms, and he runs over to find a horrifying scene for him to see. The 2 sisters are dead on the floor, and Cinder is holding up with one hand the stepmother, as she is frantically pressing that button, shocking Cinder this entire time, but Cinder is still choking the life out of her with one hand. Aura strengthening at its best, Cinder, being this 15, 16-year-old girl, is holding this grown woman off the ground, not feeling any of this pain because she's finally putting an end to it all. And so she does snap the neck of the madam and turns to Rhodes saying that she's finally free. I don't have to run anymore. But Rhodes draws his own weapons and says running is all you will ever do from here on out. And we see the smile that was on Cinder's face after finally having freed herself from the people who had tormented her for years fade to shock and then to anger, now that the one person who had given her hope all of those years is standing in her way. And so, wielding the one blade that she has, she attacks Rhodes, and is able to hold her own quite well. At one point, she is able to jump on his back and pull the blade close to his throat. He does metallicize his throat, though, making it impervious to blade strikes, but Cinder has a hard counter to that. Using her scorching caress, she superheats his throat, which obviously would cause him pain, even through his aura. Rhodes has trained Cinder quite well. After being thrown off, she grabs a bag of flour or dust and creates a bit of a smokescreen, enough that she's able to get behind Rhodes and steal the other blade that he has. So now she's wielding two weapons, and so is Rhodes. And at that point, Cinder goes full force on attack and is able to overwhelm Rhodes, breaking his aura. But then, once his aura is broken, Rhodes stops holding back and is promptly able to break Cinder's aura, launching her back against the wall and seemingly knocking her out. After that, he drops his weapons and wants to go over to make sure that she's okay, but she was just faking being knocked out. As he approaches her, she gets up quick and stabs him with both of her blades. And as he is being pierced and is dying, the last thing he does is pat Cinder on the head like he once did when she was a young child. And then, as Cinder pulls the blades out, Rhodes falls to the ground. She looks up at the moon and smiles once more, a tear falling down her face. She is finally free of the torment that she once experienced, only to have another torment begin. The clock was striking midnight as Rhodes and Cinder were fighting, or more accurately, as Cinder choked the life out of the madam, and I honestly cannot blame Cinder at all for the actions that she took. The life that she had lived up until this point must have been absolutely horrendous. And Rhodes gifting Cinder that blade probably wasn't the best idea, but I'm sure she had shown a great deal of maturity when dealing with Rhodes. It's just when the sisters and the madam found out that she had a weapon, well, of course they were going to torture the hell out of her. And that's likely what was happening that caused Cinder to snap. She couldn't take it anymore and wielded that blade against the people who were keeping her prisoner. With everything that we have seen so far in the RWBY series, it's no surprise that Cinder has had this tough of a life. With everything that she has done, her desire for power and wanting to not be anyone's puppet, anyone's servant, a lot of this makes sense. The one person that she trusted in her life, Rhodes, she had to kill with her own hands, and now she probably fears making any genuine human connections, if she even sees it as a possibility that she could actually trust someone. So this possibly raises the question that maybe she would be able to trust someone in the future, that someone might be able to make that genuine connection. Again, possibly in her final moments, but we'll have to see how everything plays out. After Cinder's backstory ends, we see her waking up in the Grim Whale yet again. And Emerald rushes over to her as soon as she wakes up, that she was so worried about her. And Cinder is not very happy. You brought me back here after we failed? Cinder knows that she's not going to be, not going to be received very well by Salem, having completely disobeyed orders and failed yet again. Emerald simply says that she was just trying to help, but then Mercury enters the room, telling Emerald that she disobeyed our queen. You might really want to think about who you're actually loyal to. And then Emerald starts defending Cinder's actions, saying that she was actually right. If only we had more backup, we could have. But Mercury then cuts her off and tells her once again that Cinder does not care about either of them, so stop defending her. Cinder gets a bit peeved at this point and orders them both to leave the room, that she'll call on them when needed. But Mercury chimes in saying, well, Salem has other plans for me. I'm not actually going to be taking my orders from you anymore. And the look on Cinder's face seems genuinely shocked, and I think she was actually a little bit hurt by this, that she thought the people loyal to her would always be loyal to her, no matter how she treated them. I mean, given how Cinder has been treated in the past, I don't know if she really knows how to treat someone well, so, there's Definitely a lot going on with the way that Cinder has grown up in the past that she's had, but this really doesn't come as no surprise that people aren't going to be obedient to someone who treats them like they're just assets. Still, Mercury informs them that Salem has some big plans. She wants everyone on the bridge as things are about to kick off. And so everyone heads on their way. And then we cut to Oscar, where he's looking a bit worse for wear after Hazel's gentle treatment. But it seems that Hazel has given him a little bit of a break as Oscar is able to have a conversation with Ozpin. And Oz is telling him, let me take over. I can give you a break. You've done enough. But Oscar is trained up enough to realize that Hazel's holding back against him. Ozpin says if I take over, I can try to help us get out of here. But Oscar has a bit of a plan, saying that this is their chance. Salem knows she can't take on the world all by herself, so she doesn't. She gets her subordinates to sneak into places and sabotage from the inside. So he and Ozpin are in agreement that maybe they should try the same. It seems like they're going to try to turn someone in Salem's inner circle and use that to sabotage Salem's plans. And it seems like their current target is Hazel, though I feel like they might be able to turn either Neo or Emerald at some point in the future, and we'll see how things play out. Maybe all three of them at some point. But Hazel returns, and as he's holding Oscar up, just saying, just tell us what we need to know, and then this can all stop. But then Ozpin takes over, and Hazel goes on a bit of a rampage again. But this gives Ozpin a little bit of an opportunity to actually talk to Hazel, try to reason with him, saying, look, I know how you feel about me, but how is Salem the answer? She's only going to bring destruction. How is that the right choice? And Hazel simply says, Salem's a force of nature. She can't be stopped. Meanwhile, there's you who send children to their death, to a fight that has no victory, that they can't win. So you just needlessly sacrifice children. But then Ozpin has a pretty good counter to that statement, saying Salem isn't a force of nature. She can actually be fought against. Unless, of course, she brings all of the relics together, then it really will be over for all of us. And we see the look on Hazel's face is one of shock. He doesn't know what would happen when all the relics are brought together. He's just working with Salem because there's no fighting against her, and may as well take Ozpin out along the way. I'm guessing Salem really hasn't told anyone in her inner circle what would happen if all of the relics were brought together, because that would destroy all of their individual goals, having the gods resummoned and judging humanity. Salem probably knows about all of this because Ozma would have told her back during the Lost Fable, and then that would have led to the fight between the two, etc. But, yeah. Hazel would be wiped out by that. Mercury wouldn't have a new place in the new world. All of this power that Cinder is gathering would be meaningless if everyone is going to be wiped out. I think Tyrion might be in support of this, just watching all of the mayhem unfold and watching the world burn and seeing the wishes of his goddess fulfilled, but other than that, don't really think anyone would support the overall world destruction plan or the wiping out of humanity, etc., just for Salem to get back at the gods in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, we can see his shock doesn't get to last long, though, as Salem arrives herself, as she gathers everyone together on the bridge of the ship. And we see some interesting positions of the different characters. We see that all of Salem's lieutenants are lined up, with Hazel, Tyrion, Cinder, and Mercury all sitting in a line, and then Neo and Emerald sitting off to the side as Cinder's assets. Mercury has now officially been graduated to one of Salem's lieutenants, and I'm really kind of looking forward to seeing what plans Salem has for Mercury and what role he will play in the future when, of course, the attack on Atlas begins and when everyone gets to Vacuo. Maybe he'll be the one that Oscar's able to turn. I doubt it, though. He seems pretty convinced at this point to be on Salem's side, but we'll end up having to see. Salem then walks in front of all of those present and announces that she has some good news, that Tyrion had been contacted by their old friend Watts. Apparently, with him working with Ironwood, he has been able to gain some control over the puppet that has been masquerading as the Winter Maiden. So it seems Watts is still proving useful after all. So, in other words, Salem had completely written off Watts, that he served his purpose and would no longer be useful. but it turns out that he is. And on that note, she turns to Cinder, and immediately her arm starts burning her. She starts screaming out in pain, very reminiscent to her past, when, the Madame would electrocute her as punishment. At that point, though, Salem says, "You failed again, and I'm realizing that it's my fault. You've spent your whole life in pursuit of your own goals, and I'm simply holding you back. You deserve so much more than what I've been able to give you." She helps Cinder to her feet and tells her, "Go to Atlas, break out Watts, and find the Winter Maiden, and you will have the Winter Maiden powers." She will be racing against the Hound, though, so whoever gets there first, either way, will have the Winter Maiden, and Salem will have her staff. At that point, Oscar speaks up and says, "No, don't let her get it. If you do, it'll be the end for all of us." Hazel quickly puts a stop to Oscar, or I guess Ozpin's, objections by slamming him into the ground, and then holding him up for Salem, to which Salem responds to his comments by saying, "It's already too late." And then we cut to Winter Schnee and the rest of the Aesops as they are searching for Penny. Elm is raising a bit of a fuss in the back, saying things like, "How do we even know that this hacking has worked? This is why I don't trust technology, and now we have to go searching for this piece of junk," referring to Penny. So, Elm is not being very kind to people she views as traitors. At that point, though, Winter turns around and says, "Look, you're supposed to be the best of the best. Start acting like it. Act a bit mature." Marrow then notices that there is an open broadcast being sent out, and so they play it. It is a distress signal from Jean, saying that there is a river of Grimm on its way to Mantle. "We are in danger. Someone, anyone, please respond." And so the Aesops and Winter decide to respond to that. And we see that they land on the ground right in front of Jean, Ren, and Yang. Jean immediately says, "You guys got our message? Okay, look, right here, there is the Grimm River. We're in danger. This needs to be stopped. Let's do something about that." Instead, Harriet is only concerned about where Penny is at that time. Jean, of course, has no idea where Penny is, but is also just flabbergasted, saying, "We need to do something about this now." And Harriet is just going off on that same thing she always has, that you guys are a bunch of kids being so selfish. But before she can even finish that sentence, the ground itself rumbles. And we see in the distance that the Grimm liquid shoots up out of the ground and hits the hard light dust barriers of Atlas, burning through them and landing onto the underside, allowing Grimm to spawn a few sentinels. And they start working their way around Atlas to the generators of the hard light dust barrier protecting the city. As the Sentinels start burrowing into the floating ground, everyone can only watch in horror as the events unfold, including Ruby, Blake, Weiss, and May that are currently in the Schnee Manor. The events are being broadcast seemingly to everyone, so if the people in the city of Atlas and the city of Mantle can see this as well, we can certainly see that panic is going to break out. From the rumbling already, we see that it is already attracting the attention of Grimm, but now it's going to be much, much worse. We see that the ships that are floating in the sky, Ironwood's military, is trying to do something about it, but firing from such a distance away, they aren't really able to take out many of them. In fact, they only take out one, as the rest of them burrow into the ground, and we see that 2 of the generators fall from Atlas. And so the hard light dust barrier protecting the city is completely deactivated. At that point, Salem says it is time, and the Grimm whale flies over to the city and beaches itself on the land, opening its mouth and spewing out a bunch of the black liquid, spawning more Grimm, and leaving it at that for this episode. The attack, the horror, and the chaos that we were expecting from Volume 8 is going to begin next episode, as the Grimm are going to invade Atlas, and likely in Mantle as well, as there's still a ton of the Grimm liquid on the ground, and probably on its way to the lowest point, that being the crater. So there is going to be a lot of fighting breaking out. Ironwood right now is in a pretty precarious position, because he sent out all of his best operatives to search for Penny. That is the goal that his semblance is forcing him to focus on. His metal has made his one decision to get the relic and get it away from Atlas the only thing that he can think of. He's not doing what he should be doing to help protect the city. Rather than keeping the military ships in the sky, his entire military focused on the threat at hand, thinking of reasons as to why Salem hasn't started her all-out assault just yet. Mantle is ripe for the taking. Why hasn't Salem attacked? What is she waiting for? What is she planning? The Grim River would likely have been visible from the sky, and none of the ships were focused on that. Ironwood, I don't think, has been giving any orders because his semblance, the double-edged sword that it is keeping his mind focused on Penny, focused on getting the relic, and that is really all he can see at this moment, thus allowing Salem to take full advantage of that, and at this point going to be able to overrun Atlas and Mantle all at the same time. Things are not looking very good. On another note, though, it is nice to finally have Cinder's backstory, or at least a portion of it, the earlier years, where she grew up, how she gained this hatred for everyone who would oppress others, who thinks of themselves higher than others, as the Atlas elite would. And it does give quite a bit of an explanation as for Cinder's drive to obtain power, to make sure that no one could lord over her, and put her into a position similar to how she was in the past. Meanwhile, being under Salem's control, her position really hasn't changed all that much. We still have gaps in Cinder's backstory. We don't know what she did after that point, after killing Rhodes, and how she got in contact with Salem, or how Salem found her, etc., and we might find that out a little bit later on. I honestly thought that Cinder's backstory was going to be saved for episode 100 of RWBY, which is episode 8 of Volume 8, when we come back from the break on February 6th, because I figured it would have been a very fitting episode, the 100th episode of RWBY, answering a few of the mysteries that began in the very first volume, with Cinder being a pretty big mystery in and of herself at that time, so still, I'm curious to know what they will have planned for the 100th episode. This episode, though, was a long-awaited one. I'm glad to have Cinder's backstory, and now that things are finally set into motion, everything is going to get very hectic from here on out. The Grimm are going to swarm throughout Atlas. I'm curious to know how much of the military, or at least the soldiers that are capable of fighting in the military, are actually there or are stationed up in the air on those ships. They won't be able to do much up there because they can't really fire freely into the city. A lot of civilian casualties, a lot of things like that, so there's going to be a lot that happens. Salem and the rest of her forces are going to be taking the stage themselves. I am curious to see if Salem herself is going to take a stroll through the city of Atlas, and in doing so, scare the crap out of some hoity-toity Atlas elites. That would be quite satisfying to see, though after that point, she's going to come face-to-face with Ironwood, possibly be Ironwood's death at that point. Cinder is now being sent after Watts, so once she gets to Watts, finds out where Penny is, she can go obtain the Winter Maiden powers. We'll see if she actually does obtain the Winter Maiden powers, or other things might end up happening at that point, but it's likely that Cinder is going to be the one that breaks out Watts, and thus also breaks out Robin and Crow, as well as Jacques, and we'll see how all of those interactions go. Crow's not going to be too happy seeing Cinder there, but he won't have his weapon at the time, so they might be at Cinder's mercy, or possibly Grimm might overrun it. Perhaps Ironwood might come to his senses, say, okay, Crow, you're free to go. We need all the help we can get at this moment because the Grimm are already in the city. There's quite a few different ways that everything could play out, but one thing we do know for certain, Salem is now going into action. Mercury is going to be there as well. Hazel is probably going to be. Tyrion certainly, but Hazel might be turned towards Oscar and Ozpin's side if they are able to convince Hazel to not necessarily turn to their side, but turn away from Salem's side, possibly even Emerald and Neo as well, so we'll see what happens there. And then, of course, there's Winter, the Aesops, Jean, Yang, and Ren, and how that entire interaction's gonna go. I'm curious to see if they'll actually help Jean, Yang, and Ren get back to Mantle, get back to Atlas, and just have more fighters to fight against the Grimm, because that would be the sensible option. However, if history has shown itself, since Jean, Yang, and Ren are all currently fugitives, and probably on the most wanted list in Atlas right now, I hope that the Aesops don't actually just continue following orders and arrest them, or try to, instead of fighting against the Grimm Horde. I'm curious to see how that's going to play out. We know that Elm and Harriet in particular are very upset with Clover's death and with the betrayal of Team RWBY and Team Alpine, so yeah, I'm curious to see how those interactions are going to go. Likely there's going to be a fight between Harriet and Crow at some point in the future when Crow gets out of jail, and that's all going to happen. Marrow's allegiance is probably going to be brought into question, as well as Winter's when she comes face to face with Weiss, so things are definitely going to start picking up pace from here on out. Let me know what you guys think, though, about Cinder's backstory, about how things are going to unfold in the future episodes. I'm really curious to know what you guys think. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys did want to see more theories, more analyses, etc., make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Tweet me at PhoenixKnight7, and I'll see you guys in the next video.